name is easily confused with Richard Howard or Richard Richards or Howard Howard and Howard Williams. I don't know why Howard, but my name is frequently confused. Let me explain how it began. My parents named me after a rich uncle, hoping the rich uncle would leave them money if they named the son after him, but it didn't work. I'm a lawyer by trade and a philosopher by calling. I live in Chile, but I teach part-time at University of Cape Town. Now, this webinar is about new ideas. We certainly need new ideas. The old ideas are not working. Hours without electricity, radical evil in the form of violent crime, unemployment, bad employment that does not pay enough to live on, corruption, ecological disasters, the very real danger of nuclear war. These are the few of our symptoms. It's a sign that we need to not conform to this world, but be radically transformed by the renewal of our minds. We want you to be an ethical leader with new ideas. We want to help bring about that result, offering new solutions that really will work to old problems, which are what is sometimes called wicked problems. Nobody's been able to solve them, but some promising advanced thinkers do have ideas which I think are quite worthy of more attention. We also want feedback. We would like to have you write us and tell us what you think and ask for any clarification you might need or disagree with us. We learn the most from people who disagree with us. I won't have time to mention all the new ideas that we'll be discussing, but I will briefly mention 5 of them. Here, I want to start with unbounded organization. This was invented by Gavin Anderson, whose picture is in the corner of the screen. It grew out of practical experience. It was not something made up in the laboratory or in the library. It grew out of experiences in Brazil, where people were given an offer of pay if they would realize a task, as carry out a task. But they had complete freedom, unbounded freedom to organize themselves in whatever way worked. And that was the germ of the original idea of Claudemir Santos de Marais in Brazil, which passed through various countries and arrived in South Africa in the person of Gavin Anderson. And he's added further ideas since. It can be described, quoting Gavin, as intersectoral collaboration, and it's working with each other in a win-win attitude. Coalition building, cross-cultural activities for what's sometimes called the common good, but we prefer to call the general good. It calls for every person and every organization do their part to meet human needs in harmony with nature. I think a sign of progress is that the new version of the King Codes makes it the first duty of every business to work for the green transition to a sustainable economy. The second idea was invented by Catherine Hoppers, whose picture appears on the screen. A discourse coalition has fills two important needs. One is that we can all work together. Christians and Muslims, for example, or non-believers don't have to give up their faith or their commitments to work on solving a problem like clean water for everyone or reversing global warming. That's one meaning of discourse coalitions. It means that we can have different discourses, but with our own discourses, we're in a coalition to get something done. The second real significance of this idea, which Catherine invented, I might mention something about Catherine. She presented these ideas first in her doctoral thesis at Stockholm University, and she was a refugee in Sweden she had been a speechwriter for Milton Obote, and when Idi Amin took power, many of her family were killed, and she survived, but very motivated to try to change this world where so many catastrophes happen. But I was going to say, another way discourse coalition is a helpful idea is that when you actually have an alliance of people who think in different ways, who talk in different ways, but they're really doing the same thing. So that's a case where you want to build bridges with your own people on your own side to have a coalition which uses a common language, which makes it easier to coordinate and also easier for the public to understand what you're saying. Because if one of the allies says one thing and another says the other, you would have been better off with a discourse coalition that we're going to reach out to the public with a common message. Now, a third important idea is modern monetary theory. I know someone in South Africa knows something about this because Kate Pickett, who's been an advisor to the presidency of South Africa for many years, she visited the sort of headquarters of this worldwide movement. Stephanie is one of the outstanding academic professors developing these ideas. She's also the author of a best-selling book. The best-selling book is called The Deficit Myth, Modern Monetary Theory, and the Birth of the People's Economy. She's also been an advisor to the Budget Committee of the United States Senate when Bernie Sanders was the chair. I want to underline this question of the birth of the people's economy. What does modern monetary say? Well, it says a great deal. We can only hope to get you interested in learning more in this webinar. But one very important point is that a sovereign country does not have to tax to create money. It can create money because it's in charge of money. Money is something issued by the government. And that being the case, and this has been tried out in practice in several places, and among others Argentina, the first thing that needs to be done on the list of things to do with money is to create decent livelihoods so that everybody has a job. You put an end to unemployment once and for all. Doing something like South Africa attempted with the community work program, but doing it with better financing and more theory behind it. So I would highly recommend the study, and we will be developing it more in later parts of this webinar. No, I don't have time to say everything. I'm going to say just one more new idea. But if I had time to say one more, besides this one, it would be Artistry in Leadership, from the book by Kaushik Suchurn, which you can easily get on Kindle edition on Amazon. It's called Sounding the Depths of Leadership. And this is really a game changer because it is a way of generating a philosophy of leadership that tells you about your own personal development as sort of a key issue, and that your own personal development has the effect of putting economic problems in a different light. That is, the people who are doing the managing really one of our students at Cape Town was the CEO of a large bus company in Cape Town, and he commented on our course, I have to be a good capitalist to be a good socialist. Because I have to do things efficiently to create a surplus that can be shared and to keep the buses running on time. So this really is not capitalism anymore, as Marx defined it, but some people hate to give up the word capitalism, and that's something we can live with. Other people hate to give up the word socialism, whatever, but we do need to insist that whatever language we choose, today is not yesterday. The ideas of yesterday are not working today, so we do need to think outside the box. That's one thing we have to be pretty much on the same page about. Now, I want to talk a bit about religion. That's enough to close any conversation. When I was a kid, my mother always said, at a family gathering, never bring up religion or politics. It's going to just bring unpleasantness. But I want to say that this is a new conversation today. The modern world began in Europe as a secularizing world. The whole point of developing economics and developing modern philosophy was to get out of the straitjacket imposed by the church on medieval life. Medieval life was being put to an end. It sort of culminated in the French Revolution, when the revolutionaries expropriated all the churches, and they also took the land of the nobles and put it in their own hands. And there's a lot to be said about this. Much of it pro, much of it contra. But people thought for a long time that religion was a relic of the past when there was no science, so people had to make up stories to explain what they couldn't really understand. But today is no longer the time of Sir Isaac Newton and Adam Smith. Today is the time of biology being the basic science we need to understand if we're going to survive as a species. And biology makes it a whole different ballgame. So what we're really talking about is what will adapt. And so if you can say, well, my spirituality and my faith are important to my life because it saved my marriage, because it got me out of my drinking problem. So these are cultural resources. You don't have to persuade everybody either to be religious or not religious, but you do have to find some way to survive. And this historically has almost always been by believing things that aren't true. And how are we any better today? My experience with cancer and with other things is that I call on my higher power, my health gets better. So if I insist on being rigorously logical and expressing everything in quantitative form, my health gets worse. So that's not what enlightenment was talking about. But it's what many people are talking about today. There are people, there's an abundance, you probably already know this, of new kinds of spiritual and also psychologies. There are many schools of psychology that do what the priests used to do. They're lay psychologists, people like Viktor Frankl, who are inventing new ways to create mental health. And lay people don't mind the word mental health, so maybe it's people who do have faith, keep it to themselves. Or we don't want to, but what I'm trying to say is, I don't know what the answers are. I know that John Lennon thinks the answer is no religion. In his song Imagine, he says, imagine a world with no religion. You know how much better that would be. I don't want to take sides, but I just want to point out that the rationalist Newtonian thinking of the 18th century should not stop us from thinking outside the box in a world where the biology of saving the biosphere is really the name of the game, and creating dignified employment and education and all of the human rights that are declared in the International Declaration are also in the Constitution of South Africa, turning them into realities. Humanity has agreed on this. Every nation has accepted human rights in principle, but in practice, well, that's up to us. We have to learn to put it into practice. Well, that's all I have to say. I hope you enjoy the rest of the webinar.